On tonight's edition of the CHGO Cubs related podcast, Cade Horton is done for the year. Seiya Suzuki is returning to Wrigley Field, and the 500 Cubs look to get things going at home. All and more on tonight's edition of the CHGO Cubs related podcast. This is the CHGO Cubs-related podcast presented by Bet365 and Toyota. Good afternoon or good morning, everybody. My name is Corey. I am joined, as always, by Brendan. We are coming to you on Friday. It is April 10th. Brendan, the Cubs are 500. They are back at home. Seiya Suzuki should be returning. We have a ton to talk about on this episode. Obviously, you and I are not on the immediate post-game shows reacting to each and every game, a more once-a-week holistic approach to the Chicago Cubs. So we'll talk about Cade Horton being done for the year and the implications there. We'll talk about Matthew Boyd's injury. We'll talk about early returns from everybody on the Cubs, the offense, the pitching staff, starters, and relievers. But Brendan, I have to start, with a question for you. It relates to something we kind of began the season talking about. And now as I'm watching things unfold, I sort of have to ask, is Nico Hoerner actually underpaid?
At this rate, he's got a slugging percentage of .550. He may hit 20 home runs. I mean, I'm thinking MVP over here. Right?
Yeah. I mean, it's what a start for Nico Hoerner.
Walking out a 15% clip. Look at that.
Celebrating the extension in style. By being the best hitter on the team.
So as of today, he is the most valuable player by wins above replacement in Major League Baseball.
I think only one of three players with at least one full win above replacement.
We don't care about the other two guys.
No, I know that.
He's just number one.
Yeah, of course.
Nico Hoerner.
Okay, so plenty to talk about. I laid a lot of it out. I think starting the show, we can just jump right into the rotation stuff. If you're good with it, I think that's
bad news first.
The most pressing topic. Yeah. So obviously Matthew Boyd hitting the injured list with a bicep injury, but hopefully that is limited. They don't seem concerned about that. But at this point, I don't know if I trust their level of concern or what they tell us their level of concern is. But hopefully that's okay. Those things happen and he'll be back in good form. Looked good in the prior starts. But I do want to talk about Cade Horton. I think that's obviously the most important news. Extremely disappointing, certainly for the player. I mean, obviously, Cade has gone through a number of injuries in his career, multiple Tommy John surgeries now with this. And long-term, who knows, right? I'm not a doctor. I don't play one on TV. I'm not going to pretend to know there, but certainly feel for the guy, right? Like coming into what was supposed to be a big year, looking healthy, looking ready to go. And then you turn to the implications for the team. And, like when we got that news, Brendan, my head just kind of spinning with any number of thoughts. We see immediately, Colin Ray, Javier Assad doing nice things in the rotation, which we talked about that depth and that you were going to need it, unfortunately needing it a bit earlier. And now, unfortunately, for the entire year. My immediate thought, Brendan, and then I'll turn it over to the pitch doctor. We talked all off season about, we spent some time on Dylan Cease, Framber Valdez, Imai, like these different guys and potentially what the Cubs needed in this rotation. And when we got to the season after acquiring Cabrera, felt, confident in the group, but had spent the entire offseason highlighting basically one concern, which was the lack of reliable top of the rotation arms that you could depend on April to October, that had that proven track record and that you could just trust. And of course, it highlighted a little bit, you and I were talking about this earlier, the John Lester episode of the Lovable Reunion with David Ross and Anthony Rizzo, a dying breed, of course, those types of pitchers. But this was the concern with that group, that you could go through the 2026 Cubs rotation and ask a question on each of these guys as to whether they would be able to, say, make 25 plus starts, be effective towards the end of the year, stay healthy throughout the year. There just was not that proven track record in at least one of those respects for each of these guys. And we talked about the potential ceiling, all of this stuff, and just a bummer, such a low percentile outcome to be facing that sort of exact problem barely even 2 weeks into the season.
Yeah, there's two perspectives, okay? You have the public perception in terms of projections and what the loss of Cade Horton means. And then you have the fans' perspective and the internal expectations from the front office that clash. So the public perception, the public projections say by losing Cade, it's not that big of a loss. What do I mean by that? Well, Colin Ray is projected for just over 1 win above replacement for the rest of the year. Cade Horton was projected for 1.4 wins above replacement. This is by Zips. In that case, it's not technically a massive loss. So why was the projection low? Well, Cade doesn't have the track record, doesn't have the history of innings to go with what you typically expect a projection system to give you a confident outlook. Then you have our expectations. You have the front office expectations, who weigh a new sinker, a new changeup, a 1 ERA in the second half of last year, and you project Cade much higher than a 1.5 win pitcher.
Yeah.
You project him as, quite frankly, an ace. And so if you were optimistic, well, the projections with a average Cade Horton already has the Cubs around 90 wins. Losing them, it's not that extreme of a difference from those projection standpoints. Then if you're us and the front office,
yeah,
the way I look at this is like, oh my God, our best ceiling.
Yeah.
We've lost, a 3+ win pitcher at minimum. And then you start to spiral. You think about the long-term implications, and it's extremely disappointing. Does it put him off contention? Absolutely not. But it requires an internal development that you and I are not expecting, or an outside the organization trade to make up for it.
Yeah, I think you touched on it. I mean, I understand why the projections were conservative, but I never subscribed to those. I think we were all expecting much greater things from Cade Horton, but I do think you hit, to me, the nail on the head. This is about the ceiling, right? Like, we know that Colin Ray can be effective. Javier Assad can be effective. Maybe they don't pitch like they did in this Tampa series every game.
Well, maybe they will.
Maybe they do.
Maybe they do.
But it's about the ceiling. Like, we know that Cabrera has the potential and maybe they can get him there. But if you were looking at a guy that was going to be in the top 10 of Cy Young voting for this team, I think almost all of us would have guessed Cade Horton is that guy, or hoped that he was that guy. And you think about how they get knocked out by Milwaukee last year. Like, sometimes you need that, like, and again, going back to that John Lester podcast, like, you need the John Lester in Los Angeles performance from one of your starters, or Kyle Hendricks in Chicago, in game 6. Like, you need your starters sometimes to just go out and dominate. And it's not to say that these other guys can't do it, but if I was a gambling man, Cade Horton would have been the guy that I would say, hey, he's going to be the guy getting all-star votes and maybe in Cy Young contention. And if they need to play a cold game, in Chicago against the Brewers or the Dodgers, and someone on this team is going to go out and shove and win a game for the Chicago Cubs, Horton would have been my main bet. And so I think that's the biggest thing that you lose in this. And so I think that points to over the course of the regular season, I don't think, of course, it's a hit to, however you feel about this team and how they are going forward. But I think the bigger hit is to their ultimate ceiling and thinking about how they would navigate a playoff run now without the guy that you would have maybe hoping to have ridden through that.
It's early. What
Sure.
I mean by that is you can make those decisions for October or a September pennant chase once the summer rolls along. A lot can happen within the next 3 months. You talked about Colin Ray, Javier Assad, Justin Steele is going to come back. So you don't have to make a decision. You don't have to go out and try to make this big splash, a trade right now. You can wait and see. And that is one of the reasons why you have 9 guys on your depth chart. We talked about this a month ago. There's many roads you can go down to get to the same destination. Now, the road to get to the destination you and I want, it's a little bit more dangerous, it's a little bit more narrow, but the road still nevertheless exists. And I enter the season talking about how I'm going to be a little bit more, taking more of a step back and just observe and not freak out and come to conclusions at the start. It's testing it, right? It absolutely is testing that philosophy that I wanted to change right now, but it still makes this possibility of them winning still one that's not unrealistic.
Sure.
And I do balance both of those sides. It is realistic. It can be good, but it is a big damage.
Yeah, look, I mean, we talked up that depth all offseason not to hype up some of these, 5th, 6th, 7th starters that the Cubs have, but to highlight that you need it. We just saw them need it last year. And, there are a lot of teams where if they lost 2 starters, now Matthew Boyd, hopefully a minimum IL stint, but, losing 2 of their top starters basically in succession, it was in the span of a few days. Not all teams across the league have guys the caliber of Colin Ray and Javier Assad to just throw in there. Like a lot of teams, if they had a couple starters go out, like they're throwing guys that probably shouldn't be at the big league level. So the Cubs are like at least somewhat set up for this. But yeah, dude, what a bummer. So close. And like, unfortunately, we've gotten used to this at the beginning of seasons, dealing with these starting pitcher injuries. It's just a bummer. I mean, I love watching Cade Horton pitch. I was excited for what he was going to do. And like I said, you just feel terrible for the person himself, like to be dealing with this again. And, of course, like I'm sure spinning in his own head about what his career looks like.
I mean, he's under 25. He has to go through a second major arm injury in like 4 years. It sucks.
Terrible.
I mean, the long-term implications are bad. Like, it's not unrealistic. He can't come back and be a good productive pitcher, but like, listen, this is a guy without a workload history with a second major arm injury under the age of 25. It's concerning. It's absolutely concerning. It's absolutely career altering at this rate. You cannot sugarcoat that.
Well, a nice dark lead into our first ad break.
Listen, we're going to talk about how the Cubs can survive, what the picture looks like, what the picture even looks like for Cade. It's not going to be a negative show. We're going to look at this from all angles. Let's
hit our first ad break here. We'll come back. We'll keep talking about the rotation. Want to dig into what we saw from Javier Assad and Colin Ray in these starts and how they can continue to be successful. Talk about the offense. We'll talk about everything. So let's take our first ad break here. We'll be back in a couple minutes.
What if you could have Wi-Fi that wasn't just fast, but actually intelligent? And what if you could keep that connection at the exact same price for 5 whole years? That is the Xfinity 5-year price guarantee. It's about more than just a monthly bill. It's about total peace of mind. Imagine Wi-Fi that makes every device in your home work together in perfect harmony. We're talking about a connection with a 6th sense that finds and fixes problems before you even notice them. It's a kind of power that lets you stream the big game in 4K, even when the rest of the family is online. All that performance locked in for 5 whole years. Here's the best part. There are no annual contracts, no hidden fees, and Xfinity's best equipment is already included. A lot can change in 5 years. Championships are won, records are broken, and dreams grow bigger. Lock in your price and unlock the possibilities today. Learn more at Xfinity.com. Xfinity, imagine that. Select plans only. Restrictions apply. As a man, you are starting to feel low energy throughout the day. Like your motivation and drives are not what they used to be, and maybe you've noticed scales creeping up, hair is thinning, muscles feeling tighter, and it might not just be aging. It could be low testosterone. At Game Day Men's Health, they help men take control of their health with personalized care tailored to your goals. The process is simple. You're in, you're out in just about an hour. They're locally owned, focused on personal care, and committed to real results. Whether it's performing at your best, showing up as a better father, husband, or man, this is about becoming your best self. And if you're not convinced, just take it from all of the folks who have tried them out. Some have lost over dozens of pounds with a year of testosterone therapy. More energy, better focus, real results. Don't wait. Take control today.
All right, Brendan, back with you here, and we'll keep talking on the rotation. Did you have any more on Horton specifically before we jump into some of the guys hopping into this rotation now?
Well, my thought thinks long term. At the same time, the reason I drew my fandom to Cade was because of that bulldog mentality. So if I'm going to bet on Cade to come back from this type of injury, or anyone rather to come back from this type of injury, it's Cade. Like, that's why we fell in love with him as a rookie. His mound presence, the ability to adjust, to develop two new pitch types. I want to see Cade back. He will have the attitude to do it. The question I have on Cade is more generalized to the system. And the question is going to be brought up. Could the Cubs have done anything different? We have Justice Steele having a similar injury. We have Cade Horton having a similar injury. ALLCITY, about 2 years ago, major arm injury. Jordan Wicks, delayed start yet again, second consecutive years of injuries. So the question is, what's going on? How abnormal is this? Are the Cubs, quote unquote, causing this, or are they missing something? I don't have the answer to that. The question's fair, though, nonetheless. I do have a question about if there's any similar trends, and I can't shake the thought that you have Justin Steele and Cade Horton, two guys that naturally cut their fastballs, more than 99% of pitchers, who both just developed a higher frequency usage of sinkers and changeups, both pitches that tend to pronate more. So then I'm starting to think about other guys who've described injuries in the past. Matthew Boyd comes to mind. Matthew Boyd said years ago that one of the reasons why his arm, that he had to go through an injury elongated phase, was because when he went to drive line, he ended up pronating more of his changeup. And so I'm thinking, okay, we have two guys who just increased the usage of a pitch that naturally lends to that. Now they have different grips to prevent the ultimate, stress and pronation of those pitches, but it just comes to mind like you have two outlier guys who change to pitch types that just naturally increase pronation. Is there something there? And I don't like asking those questions. I want absolute perfection. I want absolute certainty, but here we are, and we're asking those questions.
A rendition of the literal pitch doctor tonight, getting into the medical side of it. Yeah, I mean, I don't know.
I mean, look, it's frustrating, man.
I don't know. Obviously,
we don't
know the answer on that, but pitching is a tough exercise. Like we've talked about this before, in different draft philosophies and staying away from pitchers for sort of just this reason. Like it's a tough exercise. But yeah, I mean, look, it's something they're going to have to look at, whether it's something they can control or not. Like you're starting a few seasons in recent memory losing a fairly important member of your rotation. So not something you like to see. But let's turn to the guys stepping into this rotation and how they looked and, what we possibly can expect from them going forward. Now, obviously, if Matthew Boyd comes back, there's only so many spots. But I do want to talk about Javier Assad and Colin Ray in our new segment, Checking It Out, sponsored by Old National Bank. Every play matters, whether it's on the field or in your financial life. The best teams win by delivering excellence at every level. Old National Bank, where relationships and results matter. Member FDIC. So, Colin Ray, 5 innings, 2 hits, 1 run, 2 walks, 2 strikeouts. Javier Assad, 5 2/3, 1 hit, no runs, 2 walks, 3 strikeouts. Really great stuff from these guys, stepping in, already being called upon to hop in and make those spot starts. Javi was in the minors. Colin Ray, sort of in that usual spot for him where he's ready to play whatever role Craig Counsell has asked of him, and having played for Craig several times now, I'm sure he's used to that. But, especially with like the team scuffling a little bit to start the season, record wise, those were really important starts, Brendan, from these guys. And for both of them, not deep in the game relative to, some starters, but for them, like those are, like 5 innings plus each. Really nice to not, overuse the bullpen and help the team win a couple games, which they really needed to win.
Yeah, both those guys were impressive. Javier Assad stands out for different reasons, one of which is that he's throwing stuff that looks to be his best version of himself. Also, the innings, he almost went 6 full innings, so those 2 reasons stand out. Colin Ray stands out because the splitter looks really sharp early on in the year. The splitter actually has more drop to it than it did last season. So that's going to be something to monitor. And then you look at Colin Ray, throws 96, has a splitter that's dropping more than ever. Dude's got 7 pitch types. He has a slider, cutter, curveball, fastball, 2-seamer, splitter. Like, it's not crazy to think that Colin Ray, in his best version of himself, like the top projection and the top production for him would be around like a 3.5 ERA. Like, it's not crazy to think about that. For Javier Assad, it's the same thing. It's not crazy to think about, with a good defense and hammering his own and inducing weak contact, that he can also be a sub-4, 3.5 ERA guy, which is in fact his career average. You have 2 guys who have looked good to start the season, whose stuff is looking good, crisp, even better than before. There is some optimism there, even though you're losing Cade.
Yeah, will be interesting, see how they manage when Boyd is back, and just, how they're looking going forward. I mean, ultimately, again, like this is where the depth comes in that we talked about. You don't have to be overjoyed at necessarily who is starting on every 5th day. And certainly, these guys have questions and how this goes, as we go through the year. But like you said, it's day by day, week by week, right? Like Justin Steele hopefully comes back.
That's
at some
how
point.
They operate.
Yeah. Other guys, you see how things are going in the minors. And if there's anybody kind of knocking on the door that you want to give opportunities to, do you approach the trade deadline differently? Like, are there guys in other organizations that you can try to pilfer and see if they're available? I know people were immediately like looking at, who's available as a free agent. There's all kinds of options. Like, yeah. And maybe they pursue some of those things, but this is why that depth was built in the first place, no matter how like exciting or unexciting it might seem. And especially as we're going through the offseason, like waiting for some of those bigger moves prior to Cabrera and Bregman, like some of that depth stuff doesn't seem super exciting and it riles people up. But, here it is. It always pays dividends. Unfortunately for the Cubs, it's paying dividends early in the season right away. But this is why you have it. This is why you load up on these options. You keep these guys ready. A lot of people, kind of questioning, like, why was Javier Assad in the minors? And it was to stay stretched out. Like, luckily he was ready to go.
6 innings, ready from day one.
Not, sitting in the bullpen, throwing 1 or 2 innings in mop-up duty every now and again. Like, this is why it was set up that way. So it's not the situation you want to be in, but the Cubs, I think, better prepared for it than a lot of other teams.
Oh, I think so. Absolutely. So if you're curious about, okay, what are you looking at for Assad? Next start, monitor this. So this is his pitch movement profiles, and blue is last year, and red is this year. Every one of his pitches. If you look in the bottom left, you're going to see more red pitches in the top quadrant of that panel. That is his sinker having more carry on it. This is interesting because his sinker naturally has about 90% more carry than your average sinker. Now, it's kind of counterintuitive, but he throws it up into the hands of right-handed batters. Then drift your eyes to the rights. You're going to see the sweeper. You're going to see the red sweepers have more depth and more horizontal movement on it. Then go up a little bit, you see the cutter. The cutter has also more depth and more cut to it. Compared to last year, just in 1 start, Javier Assad's movement separation between the sinker and its breakers is greater than it ever was last season. I want to repeat that. Last year, he did not have one start with as much movement separation between his fastball sinker and his breaking pitches. Monitor that as the starts go on, because last year he was injured. The year before he had success, maybe could not go deeper into games. But if you're able to maximize what you have, well, maybe 6 innings is feasible. Maybe 7 innings is also feasible. And the fact that you're already seeing separation and stuff from last year, it's a good sign.
All right, so last few minutes, before we take our second ad break here, and then I think we'll jump into the offense and stuff like that. But holistically, how do you feel about this rotation now? Like, obviously, we're hoping the Boyd injury is minimal. That's what they're saying. It's sort of a preventative thing. But with what you've seen from Cabrera, the unknown, of course, of Justin Steele coming back and how effective he might be, how much they're able to lean on him. And, of course, like in the aftermath initially, there was certainly a confusing sort of vibe of like, is this done for the year for Cade? Is this maybe a couple months? Like, now that we know he will not be coming back, how do you feel about this rotation? How do you feel about this pitching staff? And like, we don't have to do the whole hindsight is 2020 thing, but do you look back to the offseason at all and feel stronger about, some of the opinions that we had or concerns that we had coming into this season?
I think there's a path forward for them to be productive. I think they have top shelf potential guys. I think Edward Cabrera is the one most likely. I also think Shota Imanaga is just as likely as well. So I think you have 2 guys. I would put a little bit more emphasis on Edward because of the stuff, but I want to dial in on Shota. And I got to tell you, I think Shota does not get the hype he deserves. There's a lot of, in at least the public sphere, I don't want to be antagonistic. I never want to be antagonistic, but there's a void of optimism with Shota. And I'm not here to shovel optimism, down your throats, but I do think it's worthwhile to point out when things are looking different and when things are looking similar to what they were in 2024. The reason Shota was not as productive last year, which, by the way, he had a 3.7 ERA in 144 innings at his absolute worst with that defense. The reason was he couldn't get off the mound. Shota said, oh man, last year I tried to gain some more weight because I wanted to, stay beefed up through the 2025 season. And then he hurt his hamstring. And then he couldn't get back to his athletic self in June and July, and the season ran out of time. So you have Shota last year, who was not the version of 2024. The argument is, 2024, the 2025, that was regression to the mean. The mean was not set for Shota. 2025 was not Shota. Arm release was higher, velocity was lower, athleticism was not there. So I'm dialing in on the first few starts. Well, is the athleticism back? What do I look at? Well, velocity is up 2 miles per hour. Okay. Release right back to where it was in 2024. Okay. You know what his most important pitch is? The splitter. See this graph right here? Anything in the blue means that splitter has less spin rate, means that splitter is going to just dive right down. North to south, right down. You see how you have the splitter on the left in 2025 in the red zone? Too much spin, too much run action, too much tail. Couldn't control the splitter. Couldn't get off the mound well. You want that spin rate around 1,000 RPMs. He's back to where he was in 2024 when he had 175 innings of sub-3 ERA baseball. So I talk about Edward Cabrera being a guy. I talk about other guys being guys. They may have showed his best version of himself back. You want to see this continue. You want to see the velocity sustain itself. But it's, to me, one of the ways the Cubs can survive going in October. In a best case scenario, Shota's healthy and pumping gas, relative gas, not gasoline like Daniel Palencia, and showing that splitter in October. And he can go through and be a top 3 pitcher. Edward Cabrera can be that guy. Then you have 2 guys to anchor that rotation, and then you fill in the other 3rd spot, the 4th spot. Absolutely feasible, no doubt about it.
Yeah. So we're going to hit our second ad break here. But yeah, wrapping up, I mean, certainly not the news you want. Like, no. He was the guy we were most looking forward to. I think he was the guy that the most. Horton, obviously, pushed the ceiling for the Cubs and, maybe represented that best, true, breakout. This is a stud kind of pitcher. But, you go to your other options, you move on. That's what you have the depth for. Unfortunately, we're only 12 games into the season. So not really an option for all of us to just crawl in a hole and, wish it all away. There's a lot of, 140 plus games left. There's a lot of opportunity and a lot of ways for the Cubs to still be successful in this season, despite a very big loss in Cade Horton. So when we come back, we'll talk about the offense and what we're seeing from these first 12 games. But let's hit our second ad break here.
All right, baseball season is back. If you're looking to elevate the experience just a little bit, our friends at Sunnyside Dispensary have you covered. Sunnyside is all about judgment-free shopping. Whether you know exactly what you want or you're just getting started, they've got a huge selection, over 100 different strains, plus super easy online ordering with in-store pickup. So it's quick and convenient. And wherever you are in Illinois, there's probably a Sunnyside near you. They've got locations all the way up from Champaign to South Beloit, and their staff is there to help you find exactly what you need. If you're trying it out for the first time, this is the move. Head to their website for only the best under the sun, including 50% off your first 3 online purchases. Just make sure you use promo code HICHGO at checkout. That's Sunnyside Dispensary, only the best under the sun. And remember, this is for 21 years or older or Illinois medical card holders only. Good, better, best. Chicago is home to the most iconic 3-word slogan in American sports history. But today, Bet365 is honoring that shirtless rally cry with a 3-word motto of their own: early payout offer. Here's the deal. If your team you're betting on goes up 10 points at any point in the game, Bet365 pays out your bet right there and then. It's Bet365 where winning is everything. Once you finally turn over lower whacker and get your cell phone service back, download the app. If you're a new user, they're running a massive promo. Bet $5, get $10, get $150 in bonus bets. Just deposit $10 and place a $5 bet. Is easier than riding the red line from Addison to 35th. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER. Please gamble responsibly. Must be present in Illinois. $10 minimum deposit required. Bonus bet wager excluded from returns. New customers only. 21 or over. Time limits, minimum laws, and terms and conditions do apply. Void where prohibited.
All right, Brendan, back with you. We'll talk about the offense a bit here. And, we're what? 50 plate appearances in for some of these guys, 20 for others, stuff like that. So, we're not using qualified stats here, just throwing everybody into the mix. But if I had told you at the beginning of the year that the top 4 in WRC plus for this team through 12 games would be Nico Hoerner, Miguel Amaya, Ian Happ, and Michael Conforto, would you have believed me?
No. Well, Nico, yes. But other than that, no.
In WRC plus,
that's right. Me? That's absolutely right,
all right,
Corey.
All right.
He and Aaron Judge both had double-digit home runs not too long ago. Just saying.
That reminds me, what was that the stat they always say where it's like Wayne Gretzky and his brother scored almost 990 goals. Wayne had 989 of them.
It's a stat. It's a factual stat. Your guy Michael Conforto, look at that. I got a text from you.
My guy.
I mean, I'm just
Justin Turner. I actually defended, and tried to. I don't think I've said anything about Michael Conforto other than that they're not going to cut him after 6 plate appearances.
A little behind the scenes over here. Corey was not too happy about Michael Conforto a couple days ago. Let's just say that.
Well,
look at him now.
Nothing if not a hypocrite.
Look at him now. That's what being the fan's about. He looks good though. Alex Bregman fixed him. Did you see that quote by Michael Conforto? If you don't know, so basically the story is Conforto got off to a bad start. Bregman goes up to him and says, "Hey, your posture may be tweaked." Sure enough, Conforto tweaks his posture at the dish. He has he got on base 4 times in Tampa Bay in that last game, right? Hitting rockets all over the place. So Alex Bregman is now the acting assistant hitting coach for this team, in my opinion.
Yeah, I mean, we talked about that potential impact, and we never, some of it is hard to tell. We only get the stories from some of it. But we heard all offseason about how dedicated he is to helping his teammates and just dialed in to some of this stuff that he is. And yeah, I mean, my main thought on, not to spend too much time on Conforto, but was just like, for as annoying as those first few games were, like, they're not going to, half the social media fan base wanted him gone after like 8 plate appearances.
Yeah, you too.
And it's like, I did not say that. There is nowhere that I said get rid of him out of 8 plate appearances. Post the receipt then. Let's go.
You were,
but like, I think overall on the offense, I think like the key things that stand out is you are going to need more production from Michael Busch, PCA, and even Alex Bregman himself, right? You look at some of these guys, of course, it's very early. Like I said, you're talking 30 to 40 plate appearances for some of these guys. We'll get into, I think Matt Shaw looks really good at the plate. That's something that I think is rather encouraging. Ian Happ looking good, of course, Amaya, Nico Hoerner. But yeah, I mean, those are the things that immediately stick out, right? And we went through periods of this prior to, during stretches last year, but like PCA, Busch, we gotta see it from them, right? Like I think in particular, Michael Busch is the one where, you're missing that production from him. He's been the leadoff hitter, a middle of the order guy for this team at quite a successful level. So I think certainly without Seiya, who of course comes back on Friday, and that impact I think will be quite significant, having, been without your biggest slugger. That to me is what stands out so far. But, 12 games in, I expect these things to shift, of course.
I have a question for you.
Yeah.
Do you think 100th percentile chase rate and squared up rate is good? That's good, right? That's pretty good.
Seems it, yeah.
Well, that's Alex Bregman's rate, just to let you know. Do you think 92nd percentile squared up rate is pretty good? I mean, probably, right?
Seems good.
That's Michael Busch's rate.
Yeah.
Okay. So you got to let these things play out. Busch has just missed a little bit, right? Of course you are. I know you. Although I found your Conforto text. I'm not going to out you on this because it's actually worse than I thought, but we'll let that be.
What, I wanted him in jail?
kind of. But you got to let these things play out, and you look for weird mechanical tweaks, weird mechanical mishaps. And you're not seeing that from really anyone. We can talk about PCA. We can talk about, all these guys on there and what they're doing differently, but it's within the range of what we saw last year. And that's, to me, the best you can hope for.
Yeah. And again, I know you were speaking broadly, but when I was just saying, feeling the lack of like production, right? Like under the hood is what I think in 12 games is what's important. It's, the biggest predictor of what's to come, just in terms of the lack of like results, which, you don't want to, process over results, the Theo Epstein mantra, of course.
Well, it's a weird
team, but just early in the year, that's all I mean is you're feeling like the lack of just immediate results.
It's a weird team because top to bottom, they're all above average. You don't have, to use Jed Hoyer's term, the consolidation of more or the consolidation of offensive production in the middle of the order. Like very easily, you can see Bregman bat second. You can see him bat sixth. You can see Dansby Swanson against lefties, maybe bat third. You can see Ian Happ bat leadoff. You can see Ian Happ bat eighth, right? So there's a lot of ways you can make a lineup, but you don't have the Chris Bryant 400 plus weighted on base average. You don't have peak Rizzo, backing up John Lester hitting 30 home runs every year. You just don't have that from this team. So it doesn't stand out as much when everyone has a little bit of a role and they're all pretty good at it. And it can be a frustrating watch when you don't have one guy go off on that hot stretch like we used to see.
Yeah. And I think, again, to your point, like a lot of the underlying stuff for some of these guys, even without the results, is very encouraging. One guy, to talk about who is getting some of those results, that I think is particularly encouraging is Matt Shaw. Yeah. Looking good to start the year. And I know you were, I think, digging into it the other day, doing things a little differently than what we saw last year.
He's a hybrid of his early season self in 2024 and his late season self. So look at this graph. This graph is very interesting. I'm biased towards it. But on the left, you see his swing path tilt. Anything in red means he has more of a launch angle. Okay. Anything in blue means he's chopping down the ball like he's Jason Hayward. Okay. If you look on the 2026 trend, what do you see? You see most of his swings on a 20 swing basis is in the red zone. He has more loft, more launch angle with his swing than he did most of last season. And in fact, through the first 2 weeks, it looks like he would be, I don't know, in the 80th percentile of launch angle that he showed last year. With that comes the unexpected. The unexpected is, well, he's actually now going back to more of an opposite field approach. So if you look at the red zone, this is the ability to go to the opposite field more. Last year during his best stretch, he pulled the ball like crazy. That's the blue zone on this graph. So I expected that would be the case going forward this year. I expected, okay, once the season starts, you're going to have Matt Shaw pulling the ball more, just like he did last August and September. He's not doing that. And the mirror, or rather the marriage of the trends last year was he gradually got his swing path a little bit more steeper as the year went along. That maintained itself, but he pulled the ball more. And the one thing he did keep from his minor league development and his April, May development was going to the opposite field more. So that's the hybrid. That's the marriage. Go on the opposite field more and have a little bit more launch. And so far he's having success.
Yeah, I think an encouraging start. Yeah, I think that was probably what stood out the most, just of the early offensive trends and things like that, just because he, was just so all over the place over the course of 2025 and really just not knowing what to expect out of him, not sure where he was going to be playing defensively. So again, early returns, but nice to see him putting this together. I think overall on the offense, I'm just
it's what
excited.
You expected.
Yeah, well, and I'm just excited to see Seiya come back. I think there was not enough credit seemingly in some of the early reactions for this team. I'm not excited that they're 6-6. Of course not, right? We all wanted them to start better. Joe Madden they just talked about this, the importance of a hot start. Don't dig a hole, because if you don't get to a hot start, somebody else will, right? But they're missing arguably their best hitter. And so I think that not enough credit was being given to not having one of your best hitters. He had
such a bad second half last year that just sticks in people's minds. It's that recency. Yeah. Which is fair, I think. I'll be honest.
Sure, yeah. I mean, he's had his slumps and inconsistencies, but ultimately, he's a guy that's shown you that he has that slug at this level, which this team really needs. And so I think it's going to feel a lot better when he's back in this lineup. And there's so much talk, of should this guy be hitting third? Why is this guy hitting fourth or fifth? Putting Seiya back in there alleviates at least some of that, right? Even though most of that discussion is just yelling about Ian Happ, who consistently is just a really nice player, despite half the fan base just hating his guts for some reason. So,
yeah, that's one of my biggest pet peeves, I will say.
The convo around Happ.
I don't think that's true. I think the majority of fans like Happ. I think
maybe a loud vocal minority, perhaps.
I think that's how it is. It just pisses me off because I know Happ sees that. It's what the hell? The majority of fans respect and understand. Here's my hot take. The majority of Cub fans actually know what the hell is going on. The loudest ones, they may not. When I was growing up, I was a lurker. Other than Pro Sports Daily, I was a lurker. I'm not going to chime in and be that, that loud person. Just observing, having a good time. I think a lot of listeners to you and I, they don't chime in. And I wouldn't chime in either. I think most of the fans understand this. That's just my pet peeve. I know.
After that type of language, you better hope that Shota's good in his next start.
Well, now see, I don't like when you do that because you put false hype. I'm not saying that. I'm just pointing out what's going on.
Yeah.
Oh my God. Let's take the third ad break here and then we'll finish this off. Okay. I hate when you do that. What do we got going over here? The moment. The one you realize that you left your favorite sunglasses at the beach or on the roof of your car or at a gas station 3 states away. Well, I've been there too. Whenever I leave restaurants or public places, I always freak out. Do I have my glasses? Where are my glasses? Where are my glasses? And if I lose them, I am just beside myself because I know losing them means I'm losing money. I'm losing my expensive pair that I never want to lose. But then I found Shady Rays and it changed the game. These glasses are made for real life. They're seriously good looking, polarized, durable, and not stupidly expensive. Here's the best part. If you lose or break them, even on day one, Shady Rays will send you a brand new pair. No guilt trip, just replacements. So now I actually wear my glasses without fear. Hikes, concerts, on the boat, wherever I go. Shady Rays is eyewear that has your back. Okay. And if you're a regular viewer or listener of the show, or really any CHGO show, we want to hear from you. We've got a quick survey where you can tell us what you love, what you want more of, how we can be better. And the best part, when you fill it out, you'll be entered in to win a $100 gift card to Amazon. And look, if you're already a fan of the show, you clearly have great tastes, impeccable judgment, so we trust your opinion here. All you've got to do is head to allchgo.com/survey to get started. And if you're watching, just scan the QR code there right on your screen. It takes about 3 minutes to fill out the survey. Your feedback, it genuinely helps shape what we do around here. I mean, don't you wish the front office took feedback like this? So go ahead, take that survey, let your voice be heard, and you might walk away with a $100 Amazon gift card. Again, that's allchgo.com/survey to get started. And once again, for a $100 Amazon gift card.
All right, Brendan, back with you. Did you show your PCA graph? Do you want to talk about that?
Wow, you remember my graphs?
I
so
study
thoughtful.
the inventory before
That's so
we come on the air. Yeah.
Okay. We could talk about PCA. I mean, listen, PCA, if you're watching PCA, I don't even think we need graphs to look at this. He's out in front more. And there was conversations about the bat speed. Bat speed's higher now than it was most of last year. He said he
didn't like that. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, he did the exact same thing last year. The exact same thing. And so like the bat speed to start the year last year was very high. And we're all thinking, oh my God, this guy got stronger. And so he's doing the same thing. And eventually last year in May, the bat speed went down and he had his success. Right now, Pete is just out in front of the ball more. So he's fooled a little bit more. And when you're fooled, you're more convicted, you're more out in front, you're swinging harder. That's typically what happens. If you look at this graph right here, this is his contact point. So anything in red means he's out in front. He's making contact more from the home plate, right? So if you look at last year, he was at his best when he was around the red zone. This is a good sign, right? It means he's close to being where he wants to be, but right now it's just too much. Like his recent swings would qualify the 95th percentile of his swings where he was mostly out in front last year, and that actually corresponded to his worst stretch in right around the end of July. So you want to see Pete dial it back into his comfort zone, but it's not that far off. I'm visually watching him, and I think a lot of the batted balls he's just missing. I think it's different than when he was really slumping last year. I don't find myself thinking that he's so fooled. I think he's really just missing. I think that's a good sign.
Okay. So, yeah, I mean, look, overall, last 10 minutes here, I think, 6-6, like it's not the ideal start. Brewers off to a pretty hot start. Division overall looks pretty good, but 12 games in. I really think this offense is going to find a groove. And again, like I think while the Horton thing is pretty devastating, like, they have guys that can step up and it's a long season. And I think they're going to hit a groove. Hopefully it coincides. Seiya comes back at Wrigley, weather a little nicer in Chicago, and we can get ourselves on a little bit of a run here. But like overall, any outstanding thoughts on the first couple weeks of the season? I mean, certainly not how we would have drawn it up.
No, I mean, frankly, my outstanding thought is the contrast with 2016. I'm listening to the Lovable Reunion podcast shows. I'm seeing Joe Madden.
They need to be taking more shots before the game. It's a lesson.
Maybe. But you know what I found myself thinking? I don't know how it was for you. Maybe we can spend the next 8 minutes talking about this. But when I was listening to Joe Madden on that show, I found myself back in that 2016 mindset. And I was thinking, I'm like, I haven't been in this mindset thinking about that team like that in 10 years. And the key phrase that Joe Madden brought up multiple times was pressure release valve. And he was emphasizing how in sport these days, maybe those pressure release valves aren't as available. And that's what made the 26 team in that personality group successful. I look at the current Cubs team now, it's hard not to contrast the personality types. Like right now, this current roster, super analytical, super professional. And to me, like, listen, I relate more to those guys. So no complaints on my end, but it does contrast and make me think like, man, a lot of what went well in 2016, I do wonder if like this current roster, this current rendition of this team could learn a little bit from that.
I mean, I would think that any team could learn from that group, right? Like they get it done on the, with the most pressure probably ever.
Right.
Yeah, it was interesting. Like, I mean, obviously I love that episode. I think the best part of the episode, honestly, maybe not something John was doing, but it was how Anthony kept going. It's not about me. It's not about me, but I did hit a home run in that game.
Yeah. No, I love that.
That was great.
But
like I found myself, I know a lot of people's instinct was going to be like, boy, they were drinking a lot, like a lot more the night before in the clubhouse, like I thought before the game. Well, so it did stand out to me, but in more at sort of as you're alluding to, like in more of a human nature kind of way. Like it didn't strike me as like, oh, these guys were partying and they didn't care. It struck me more as like Joe and the team really did have a good balance. And Ross mentions this of like keeping loose off the field, getting your job done, and not like being overly tight about some of that procedural stuff. Right. And that doesn't mean like, yeah, man, like fill the clubhouse with, Don Julio. Right. And like, let them go wild.
Times.
But like to me, when they're saying like, hey, when I was struggling, when I was in a slump, like, we take a shot before the game and like try to like shake it off. I think sometimes it's easy to forget that these guys are just people. Like they were dealing with an extreme amount of pressure. John talks about a lot the pressure that he felt in that April of 2015. He said he felt like he needed to win the World Series in April because of that big contract, coming over to an organization that was basically like turning over the keys of ending this curse to him, like specifically like, hey, you're the big guy. You've done it before. Like this is kind of your thing to lead. And so that's sort of what struck me. And it does go back to, the vibe and culture that Joe Maddon curated. And those guys feeling comfortable to be honest with him about how they were feeling about their night before or how their body was feeling or, any of that stuff and just how important that was. A fascinating conversation. The other main takeaway I had from that was like, we knew this, you and I have talked about this a lot. Other people have certainly talked about this a lot, but the importance of bringing in those winners. It did validate a lot of what I felt about bringing Alex Bregman over, honestly. Yeah, like, and you never know these guys.
I went there as well.
Yeah, these guys are not, they're not the same people. Alex Bregman is not John Lester. John Lester is not David Ross. They're not John Lackey. They're all different people, right? Ben Zobrist, different guy. But you really felt even in that conversation, like what proven winners bring to a clubhouse. Anthony kept talking about the different things that he took from them and did for the rest of his career, whether it was talking to the media, game prep, things like that. He kept saying like, yep, that was something that you guys taught me and I kept it with me for the rest of my career. I said it in every clubhouse for the rest of my career, stuff like that. And so it did kind of validate in a way, like, again, Alex Bregman needs to perform on the field. That's where, of course, all of this matters and like what is ultimately important. But there is like a real value, especially you think about some of the young guys on this team that last year and getting to the playoffs was their first taste of success at the big league level and going into a postseason series and getting your teeth punched in by your division rival and getting sent home. Like that was their kind of first experience of that. And I did think listening to that conversation, it did illuminate kind of like, man, like bringing in these guys who kind of set the tone and give these guys a little bit of like a proof of concept of like how to go about their business, how to think about these things. It's important. It really does matter.
One of my favorite stories was when Rizzo was talking about in 2015, the very first live BP session in spring with Lester and Ross. And he was saying that was the most intense live session I've ever seen.
Yeah.
And Rizzo was saying that set the tone from day one. And I'm thinking similar thoughts for Bregman coming in. And you're right. There's always I don't want to call it a debate, but the discussion of what clubhouse chemistry value really is, how quantifiable it
Sure.
is. How can you not look at that 2015 squad with Ross and Lester, and in 2016 bringing over Lackey? That intensity, it naturally changes the way you go about your business. It naturally changes the ability for you to find adjustments, to produce, to get base hits. Rizzo also had a great story about who's unfortunately has passed many years now, but the former sports psychologist, Dr. Ken Ravizza, and how Joe brought him in. And Rizzo was saying like that interaction with the sports psychologist was one of like the most transformative aspects for him personally, and for him, of course, career-wise. And they would go through their routine, eyes closed in the box, and they would have to try to get it down under a minute. It's like things like that, right?
Yeah.
And like that doesn't come in unless you hire Joe Madden. You talked about John Lester's intensity. Well, you also talk about the contrast and the pressure release valve, and them going to Pebble Beach and John's golfing 24 hours before he's pitching. So you have this contrast that doesn't happen without Joe Madden. And as time goes on, I feel like we're becoming more critical as a fan base of Joe. It doesn't sit well with me. It just doesn't. And that's why when I'm listening to him and hearing the stories, I'm like, man, like they really had a generational special group.
Yeah. No, absolutely. I mean, that's one of the main takeaways. Like we've talked before about, the timeline of the players coming together at some of those guys have the best and only good years of their career, like right when the Cubs really needed it. But it's the bigger thing. It's the whole organization. Like they're telling the stories about Theo, when he took, accountability. Again, another
Brian
unfortunate
Mattis.
loss, Brian Mattis, and doing that spot start, but kind of disrupting the flow of things, thinking it would give guys a break, and they didn't like it. The Theo negotiating the Ross story is the best thing I've ever heard. They have a lot of interviews coming up on this podcast, but that was genuinely the coolest thing I have ever heard. And the best part about it too, even knowing Theo only through the screen and tweets and interviews, you can picture him doing it. You can picture him
100%
kind of glazed over eyes and not speaking, but just chugging this beer. Like, I'll give him 5. Like, I absolutely love that. Yeah, and it is interesting because it's interesting to hear all of this stuff now. Of course, they're celebrating the 10th anniversary this year, but it's always interesting to just sort of contrast. Like the game is in a very different place, right? Like clearly the game and the way things were thought about had changed, and obviously Joe Madden was not thought of in the same regard, but that's natural, right? Like it's rare that you have those guys who are revered and successful and sticking in those positions decade over decade over decade. Usually it runs out, right? No matter who it is, eventually the game or just the sort of paradigms of the sport pass them by or just change in a 60. Yeah, it's human nature. But it's interesting to sort of apply it to a current team and just think about how much has to go right for that group. All those little things in terms of the off the field stuff, the clubhouse stuff, the on the field stuff. It's a fascinating thing. I'm very much looking forward to, especially when they talk to some of the younger guys. I'm very curious to hear their perspective. I know they're going to talk to Chris Bryant. I can't remember exactly who they have slated. I feel like they're keeping some of it not quite announced.
Well, they have Dexter coming up as well.
So I'm just going to be very curious to hear, like from Chris Bryant's perspective as, the most successful guy on the team performance-wise, but also one of the youngest, like what that was all like. We're going to get out of here. But the real main takeaway for me, Brendan, like I love John Lester.
Oh, do you?
The way he talks about winning is what any fan wants to hear a player say. The way he talks and how angry he is all the time when anything goes wrong and all this
it's kind of like you.
It's amazing to hear a player that is just so dedicated. I just want to win. I'm here to win. Anything that gets in the way of that is not acceptable. And just the way that he talks about that. The other best thing is I always love being reminded that no matter how true that part is, David Ross is always the one yelling at him, right? Not the other way around. Ross is always the one, telling him, throw your changeup. I told you not to throw that curveball in the zone, John, All right, and we are going to do a quick overtime tonight to finish the podcast. If you're watching on fast channels, head over to YouTube, and we will sign off over there. And I love that that's the dynamic. Those stories are so good. Him yelling at him in the clubhouse, John yelling at Anthony in the trainer's room. Like, that stuff is just great. So quite enjoyable. Looking forward to the rest of that. I mean, a 2-hour podcast that I felt like flew by. I mean, can you imagine you and I talking for 2 hours? I mean, there's no way.
Oh, we would never be able to do that, right?
No, we can do 90.
Yeah,
we've done 90 before.
Listen.
All right. So Cubs back at home. Seiya coming back. Tough news with Cade Horton. Obviously, you hope the Matthew Boyd thing is a limited IL stint, but long season. A lot of runway left. I don't think we've seen, clearly, we have not seen this team kick it into their highest gear. And I do think that they're going to do that. I think they have a run in them soon, and we'll see a better picture of what I think this team is actually going to look like over the long haul of the season. But this is the ups and downs of the season. This is what you always warn about, Brendan, when you're enjoying spring training on the backfield and there's no consequence. You're always warning, like, hey, once this starts, there's a lot of stuff that goes wrong. There's a lot of stuff that tests your, emotional stability with this over the course of 162 games in 6 months or whatever it is. And for the 2026 Cubs, we're getting a heavy dose of it less than 14 games into the year.
I'm doing good,
so
surviving.
Stay strong. This is a good team. I think they will bear that out sooner rather than later. But for now, Brendan and I will talk to you again next Friday. Don't forget to tune in to Luke, Justin, and Joey throughout the week for your post-game shows. Let's hope for, some Seiya bombs, warmer weather at Wrigley. It's offense heating up. And when you and I next speak to our lovely listeners, Cubs over 500, we're feeling good, and we're ready to go for the duration of the season. So we appreciate your support. Brendan and I will be back with you next Friday. And as always, go Cubs.
We all silly like the man.